this is where you can find it with its Asteraceae little thing. Achillea millefolium, again, is the Latin name. And to kind of make sense of that, the primary use of yarrow, I wouldn't say primary, but one of the main uses for yarrow is that it's a styptic. What is a styptic?
Stops blood.
Stops blood. So that's really important for all sorts of, because yarrow grows everywhere, and you often hurt yourself in the garden, so it's right there for you. And Achilles is the tail, the Greek tail of the guy who couldn't die, right? And if you read deeply into that myth, he used the plant. He's the one who figured out that it heals everything. So it was keeping him invincible because the Greeks believed it was such an incredibly healing plant. So that's how it got into, the genus got named Achillea. That's where that comes from. So think it's like it stops bleeding and it heals you. Achilles was invincible. That's the first part of the Latin name. And the second part of the Latin name is, as you look, it has millions, not really, but it has like thousands of little leaflets and little leaf projections. Which is where the millefolium comes in. So that's just to make sense of the Latin. I don't know the name of all of the Latin in this place, but there's a lot of really helpful hints. Not as good as anatomy, where they're directly naming things after, usually it's much more linear than it is in plant world. They got a little more creative. I recommend also just passing this around and eating a little piece. I really like it. Oh right, the yarrow tincture was taken from my lab, which made me very sad. But yeah, feel free to pass it around and just take little bites. It's a bitter. I think you guys learned that in class.
Did we taste the tincture in lab last week, maybe?
Hopefully you did. I'd like to have it right
Everything
here.
tasted terrible.
Yeah, it was a bitter lab. Especially you guys had gentian, right?
Yeah.
You don't forget gentian. You never forget it. But at the same token, it's so effective for what it needs to do. Gentian is like our massive, super uber bitter. And a bitter helps to stimulate digestion and increases peristalsis, so it's great before a meal, which is often where the tradition of eating a dark green leafy salad before meals comes from, because those plants are bitter, and as a result, it stimulates digestion before you have your big fatty meal.
We just put a bunch of sugar dressing on it now.
Yeah, now we ruined that property, but that's really why, like if you ever ask yourself, why does a salad come first? It's not just because. That was the medicinal reason for it. Medicinally also, yarrows are really great tonic. It gets a styptic internally too. Women with heavy menstrual flows, where it's like excessive, oftentimes yarrow, especially with pain and cramping associated. Not just like, oh well, I personally have a heavier flow, but more like a pathologic one. Yarrow is a really great one to use in conjunction with some other herbs. It really helps stop the bleeding, to the point where sometimes people don't like to use it, like it can get contraindicated because it can be too good at what it does. Additionally, this gets a little further out there, but if you want to know more, feel free to ask me. In Planetary medicine, which is using kind of astrology-based herbalism, it's kind of similar to homeopathy. It's an energetic version of using herbs. It's ruled by the planet Venus, which means it's good for kidney, water excretion, and those sorts of things, as well as emotions, especially when you feel vulnerable, which in my mind makes a lot of sense, because yarrow is this fighter, right? Like Achilles fighter, it can heal itself. So I always recommend it for things like in a formula that's meant to be energetic when someone doesn't feel like they can get up to muster, like to get over. Like if you get over a breakup, like you have a breakup and you're just stuck on the person, but with that more of poor me, like why did this happen to me? Like yarrow is actually very indicated. And oftentimes, and this is where planetary stuff is kind of fascinating, is oftentimes your symptom picture will match. So she'll also have heavy menstrual flow and cramping, and it's like, oh, well, yarrow both ways it works, So both in a scientific medicinal way, as well as there's a lot of magic in here that I know a lot about. Yes?
What kind of plants do you use?
The part of the plant you use is the leaf. You can use really the whole plant because the roots aren't particularly invested. The flowers are used the most for the external styptic, but in a pinch, both work. The flowers have more azulene, chamagiline, and some other constituents that are really good for anti-inflammation, which helps to heal faster.
And do you think this would stop intestinal bleeding?
Probably not, because it depends on like the level of intestinal bleeding. But also
it's for stomach ulcers, just not. It won't make it to.
For stomach ulcers, it would definitely be something I would add into a formula. But like for stomach ulcer, I'm thinking licorice. You know, like I'm going licorice, marshmallow. Like that's where I'm going to just be much more direct and effective to that issue. But if you threw in a little yarrow, like definitely will help bolster that situation for sure. But I was thinking more like if you had like in colitis and stuff, I wouldn't expect that.
No.
To be okay. So that's my friend Yarrow. Any other questions? I feel like that went well.
Yeah.
Calming down. Okay, so